What happens when silence speaks louder than words, and a single stare turns a daytime talk show into a pressure cooker no one saw coming. Before we go any further, pause for a second. If you love raw celebrity moments, uncomfortable truths, and behind-the-scenes tension that never makes the headlines, make sure you subscribe to Stage View right now. Like this video, drop a comment with your first impression, and stay with us, because this story only gets darker from here. The lights inside the View studio were warm, almost deceptively so. Soft applause rolled through the audience as cameras glided into position, red tally lights blinking awake like watchful eyes. It was supposed to be another polished morning segment, another celebrity appearance wrapped in smiles, laughter, and sound bites clipped for social media. Tom Hardy was the guest of the day. The actor known for disappearing into roles, for saying more with a glance than most do with monologues. And seated across from him, Whoopi Goldberg, relaxed in her chair, papers stacked neatly, her expression open but seasoned. She had seen everything. Or so it seemed. Tom walked out to applause that felt thicker than usual, heavier. He nodded once, a half-smile flickering and vanishing before it fully formed. He wore a dark jacket, simple shirt underneath, nothing flashy. His hands stayed clasped as he sat down, shoulders slightly forward, as if bracing against something invisible. The audience cheered again. He lifted his eyes and acknowledged them, but his gaze lingered longer on the table, on the space between himself and the hosts. Whoopi leaned forward first. Her voice was smooth, practiced, friendly. "Tom Hardy, everybody." The crowd responded on cue. "It's good to have you here." "Thanks for having me," Tom replied. His voice was low, almost swallowed by the applause fading around him. At first, everything followed the script. Light questions. The new film. The physical transformation. The dedication to craft. Tom answered politely, carefully, choosing words like he was walking across thin ice. He smiled at moments, laughed once briefly. But there was something else. A stillness that did not relax. A tension that did not leave. Whoopi noticed it. You could see it in the way her eyes stayed on him a second longer than usual. She shifted slightly in her seat. "You're known for these intense roles," she said, tilting her head. "People always say there's something going on behind your eyes. Does that ever get exhausting?" Tom looked up, and this time he didn't look away. For a heartbeat, the studio felt quiet in a way that microphones do not register. His jaw tightened. His eyes locked onto Whoopi's, steady, unreadable. No smile. No nod. Just a stare that seemed to pull the air out of the room. "It's not something you switch off," he said slowly. "It's something you live with." A ripple moved through the audience. Not laughter. Not applause. Something in between. Whoopi raised her eyebrows, amused but curious. "So you're always on?" Tom's lips pressed together. He glanced briefly toward the other hosts, then back to Whoopi. "I wouldn't say on. I'd say aware." The word hung there. Aware. Whoopi smiled, but there was a crack in it now. Aware of what? That was the moment. The pivot. Tom leaned back slightly, but his eyes never left her. Of what people expect you to be, and what they really want you to say. A few audience members shifted in their seats. A soft murmur traveled across the rows. The camera cut to a wide shot, then back in, closer than before. Whoopi laughed lightly, trying to soften it. "Well, this is a talk show. We ask questions." Tom nodded once. "I know." Silence followed. Not the comfortable kind. The kind that makes producers lean forward behind the cameras. Whoopi glanced at her notes, then back up. "You've been very open in the past about mental health, about pressure in this industry. Do you ever feel like interviews push too far?" There it was. The question wrapped in politeness. Tom inhaled slowly. You could see it in his chest. "Sometimes," he said. "Sometimes they push because that's the job. And sometimes they push because they know the audience is watching." Whoopi's smile faded just enough to be noticed. The audience is always watching. Tom finally broke eye contact, looking out toward the crowd. Hundreds of faces stared back at him. Some curious. Some excited. Some uneasy. "Exactly," he said. The atmosphere changed. The other hosts sensed it. One leaned in, ready to jump in. Another adjusted her cue cards. But Whoopi held up a hand, subtle but firm. She had been here before. She wasn't backing down. "So let me ask you directly," she said. "Do you feel uncomfortable here today?" Tom turned back to her. His expression was calm. Too calm. "I feel present." A nervous chuckle rolled through the audience. Whoopi crossed her arms loosely. "That's not an answer." Tom tilted his head slightly. It's the most honest one. The studio felt smaller now. The lights harsher. Every breath audible. This wasn't in the rundown. This wasn't rehearsed. This was two powerful personalities circling each other in real time. Whoopi leaned forward again, her voice firmer. We're not here to trap you. We're here to talk. Tom's eyes softened for just a fraction of a second. Talking isn't the same as listening. That line landed like a dropped glass. You could almost hear it shatter. A woman in the audience gasped quietly. Another covered her mouth, eyes wide. The camera cut to Whoopi's face. For the first time, she looked genuinely surprised. Are you saying I'm not listening? She asked. Tom hesitated. The longest pause yet. Inside his head, 1,000 calculations seemed to play out. You could feel it. The weight of being Tom Hardy on a live broadcast, knowing every word could become a headline within minutes. I'm saying, he replied carefully, that sometimes silence says more than answers. And sometimes people don't like what silence suggests. Whoopi exhaled through her nose, a short breath. Well, silence doesn't make good television. Tom met her gaze again. And this time, something sharper surfaced. Neither does pretending. The audience reacted instantly. A wave of sound. Murmurs, whispers, a few claps quickly hushed by confusion. One of the hosts opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again. Whoopi sat back. Her voice dropped. Are you accusing us of pretending? Tom shook his head slowly. No, I'm saying the system encourages it. The word system echoed. Heavy. Loaded. Behind the scenes, producers were scrambling. Graphics stalled. A segment clock blinked red. This was drifting off course fast. Whoopi looked straight into the camera for a brief second, then back at Tom. You came here to promote a film. Tom nodded. I came here to be honest. Another pause. The kind that makes time stretch. Whoopi uncrossed her arms. Honesty goes both ways. Tom's jaw clenched. Then let me ask you something. The studio collectively inhaled. Do you ever feel, he continued, voice steady but low, that you already know the answer before you ask the question? A hush fell. Even the audience seemed to forget to breathe. Whoopi didn't answer right away. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in focus. Sometimes, she said. That comes with experience. Tom nodded, as if he had expected that. And sometimes, he replied, experience can stop you from hearing something new. That was the moment the tension crystallized. Not loud, not explosive, just sharp enough to cut. The director signaled for a commercial break. The audience applause sign lit up, flickering urgently. A few claps started, uneven and unsure. Whoopi smiled for the camera, professional to the end. We're going to take a quick break, she said, her voice smooth but eyes still locked on Tom. And we'll be right back. The music swelled. Cameras pulled away. But the energy did not leave the room. Tom leaned back in his chair, finally looking down, rubbing his hands together slowly. Whoopi turned slightly toward him, saying something off mic. He nodded once, not looking up. In the audience, people whispered to each other, phones discreetly lowered but already buzzing with messages being typed. Something had just happened. Something unscripted. And everyone could feel it. And as the lights dimmed for the break, one question hung in the air, heavier than all the rest. What happens next when the cameras come back on? This is only the beginning. The music faded, but the tension didn't. It clung to the air like static, buzzing just beneath the surface as the cameras reset and the studio lights burned back to full intensity. The audience applause sign blinked again, demanding enthusiasm, demanding normalcy. Some people clapped. Others hesitated, palms half raised, eyes darting between Tom Hardy and Whoopi Goldberg like spectators at a match that had already crossed the line between sport and something personal. Tom sat still, shoulders squared, gaze lowered for a moment longer than necessary. Inside his head, the noise was louder than the studio had been seconds earlier. He could feel the familiar tightening in his chest, the old instinct to retreat inward, to say nothing and let the moment pass. But something had already been said. Something had already shifted. Whoopi adjusted her glasses and took a measured breath. Years of live television had taught her how to reset a room, how to smooth over rough edges with timing and tone. But this felt different. This wasn't a joke gone flat or a question taken the wrong way. This was resistance. Quiet, deliberate resistance. The director's countdown echoed in everyone's earpieces. 3, 2, 1. We're back, Whoopi said, her voice warm, practiced, almost soothing. Still here with Tom Hardy. Applause rose again, louder this time, as if the audience were trying to convince themselves that everything was fine. Tom lifted his head, nodded once, and offered a faint smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Whoopi turned toward him, hands resting on the table. "Before the break, things got a little intense," she said, choosing the word carefully. "And I want to make sure we're on the same page." Tom looked at her, expression unreadable. "I'm listening." A subtle emphasis on the word. Whoopi caught it. She didn't react outwardly, but something flickered behind her eyes. "This show," she continued, "has always been about conversation. Sometimes that means uncomfortable questions. Sometimes it means uncomfortable answers." Tom nodded slowly. "That's fair." "So," Whoopi said, leaning in just a bit, "let's talk about what made you uncomfortable." A murmur rippled through the audience. The camera zoomed in tighter now, close enough to catch every micro-expression. Tom's fingers tapped once against his knee, then stilled. "It's not about discomfort," he said. "It's about intention." Whoopi tilted her head. "Whose intention?" Tom didn't answer right away. He glanced toward the audience again, then back to the host's table. "Everyone's," he replied. "Mine included." One of the co-hosts shifted in her seat, sensing the conversation drifting back toward a cliff edge. She opened her mouth to interject, but Whoopi subtly waved her off without breaking eye contact with Tom. "Explain that," Whoopi said. Tom exhaled slowly. "When you come on a show like this, there's an expectation. You're here to entertain, to reveal something, to fit into a narrative that already exists." "And that's bad?" Whoopi asked. "It can be," Tom said, "if the narrative doesn't leave room for reality." The word reality landed heavier than he likely intended. A few audience members nodded. Others frowned. Whoopi leaned back, crossing one leg over the other. "Reality is subjective." Tom's eyes sharpened. "Pain isn't." The temperature in the room dropped. The audience went quiet again, this time instinctively. Whoopi paused. For the first time, she seemed to weigh whether to push forward or pull back. "Are you talking about something specific?" she asked. Tom hesitated. His jaw tightened, then relaxed. "I'm talking about the assumption that because someone is successful, because they're visible, they owe access to every part of themselves." Whoopi's voice softened. "People connect through stories." "They do," Tom agreed. "But connection isn't extraction." A sharp inhale echoed from somewhere in the audience. The word extraction hung there, raw and uncomfortable. Whoopi folded her hands together. "No one here is trying to take anything from you." Tom met her gaze. "Then why does it feel like a test?" The silence that followed was thick enough to feel. One of the cameras subtly adjusted focus, as if searching for something to hold on to. Whoopi's expression changed, her tone losing some of its softness. "This isn't a test. It's a conversation." Tom's voice dropped lower. "Then why do I feel like I'm being graded on my answers?" A few nervous laughs rippled through the audience, quickly fading when no one on stage joined in. Whoopi sat forward again. "Let me be very clear," she said. "You're not being judged." Tom nodded once. "Then let me be very clear too." The audience collectively leaned in. "I'm not here to perform vulnerability on command." The words hit hard. Not shouted. Not dramatic. Just honest. Too honest. Whoopi blinked slowly. "No one asked you to." Tom raised an eyebrow slightly. "Didn't they?" Whoopi stiffened. "I asked questions." "And I answered," Tom replied, until the questions started circling something else. "Like what?" Whoopi asked. "Like whether I'm open enough," Tom said. "Grateful enough. Transparent enough." The other hosts exchanged glances. One shifted her cue cards nervously. Whoopi shook her head. "That's not what this is." Tom leaned forward now, mirroring her posture. "Then what is it?" A beat passed. 2. 3. Whoopi's voice lowered. "It's about understanding you." Tom's gaze softened for a moment, but his tone remained steady. "Then understand this. Silence is sometimes the safest answer." "Safe from what?" Whoopi asked. "From being misunderstood," Tom said. "From having something reduced to a soundbite." A smattering of applause broke out from the audience, hesitant but real. It grew slightly before dying down, uncertain whether it was appropriate. Whoopi glanced toward the audience, then back at Tom. "You know this is live television." "I do," Tom replied. "That's why I'm choosing my words carefully." Whoopi sighed, the sound picked up clearly by her microphone. "You think we're here to trap you into a headline." Tom paused. "I think the system rewards headlines more than nuance." The word system again. It echoed like an accusation without a target. Whoopi's eyes narrowed. "You keep saying that. Because it's bigger than you, Tom said quickly. And it's bigger than me. The tension shifted slightly, redirecting outward rather than directly between them. The audience relaxed just a fraction. So why bring it here? Whoopi asked. Because this is where it happens, Tom said, gesturing subtly around the studio. This is where the image gets shaped. Whoopi leaned back, studying him. You're very aware of the machine. Tom gave a small, humorless smile. I've been inside it long enough. A co-host finally spoke up, her voice tentative. Tom, do you regret coming on today? Tom turned toward her, surprised by the question. He considered it for a moment. No, he said. But I regret the expectation that honesty has to look a certain way. Whoopi nodded slowly, absorbing that. And what does honesty look like to you? Tom glanced down at his hands, then back up. Sometimes it looks like saying less. Sometimes it looks like refusing to turn pain into entertainment. The studio was silent again. Even the audience applause sign stayed dark. Whoopi straightened, her voice firm. Pain is part of the human experience. Talking about it helps people. It can, Tom said. When it's chosen. Not when it's requested. Whoopi's lips pressed together. You think I'm requesting your pain? Tom held her gaze. I think the format does. A wave of whispers moved through the audience like wind through tall grass. Whoopi turned slightly toward the camera, then back to Tom. This format has helped a lot of people feel less alone. I believe that, Tom said sincerely. I also believe it's okay to draw boundaries. Whoopi nodded once, slowly. And where's your boundary right now? Tom didn't answer immediately. He scanned the room, the cameras, the faces, the expectation hanging thick in the air. Then he spoke. My boundary is this, he said quietly. I won't let silence be framed as avoidance. Whoopi absorbed that. And I won't let questions be framed as attacks. Their eyes locked again. Not hostile. Not friendly. Just two strong wills refusing to bend. The audience sat frozen between them. The director signaled again, this time more urgently. Time was slipping. Control was thinning. Whoopi broke eye contact first. She took a breath, then smiled faintly. We're almost out of time, she said, professionalism reasserting itself. So let me ask you something simpler. Tom waited. What do you want people watching at home to understand about you? The question hung there, deceptively gentle. Tom considered it. For a long moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched, daring someone to fill it. Finally, he spoke. That I'm still figuring it out, he said. And I don't have a polished answer for that. Whoopi nodded slowly. That's fair. The audience applauded, more confidently now, relieved by the release. But beneath the applause, something remained unresolved. Unsaid. As the clapping faded, Whoopi added quietly, sometimes people want more. Tom met her gaze one last time. And sometimes, he replied, more isn't what they need. The cameras pulled back slightly. The segment clock flashed red again. What neither of them could know yet was that the real conversation had already left the studio. And it was spreading fast. The moment the cameras cut away, the studio exhaled like a living thing. Applause dissolved into murmurs, then into the low hum of people talking all at once. Phones appeared in hands like reflexes. Messages were already being typed, clipped phrases already escaping into the wild before anyone could agree on what they had just witnessed. Tom Hardy stayed seated. He didn't reach for water, didn't adjust his jacket. His eyes followed the movement of the crew resetting lights, the quiet urgency of producers whispering into headsets. He had the strange sensation of having stepped outside himself, of watching the aftermath from somewhere just behind his own eyes. Whoopi turned slightly toward him, off camera now, her voice low. You all right? Tom nodded once. Yeah. She studied him for a beat longer, then leaned back. You know this is going to be a thing. I figured, he said. The red light flicked back on sooner than expected. A producer's voice counted down. The audience straightened instinctively, like soldiers returning to formation. Whoopi faced forward again, smile returning with professional ease. We're back for our final moments with Tom Hardy. Applause erupted, louder than before. This time it felt less polite, more charged. The audience wasn't just clapping for a guest. They were clapping for the tension, the uncertainty, the feeling that something real had almost broken through the surface of daytime television. Whoopi waited for the noise to die down. Tom, she said, we've been talking about boundaries, about expectations. Tom inclined his head slightly. We have. And I want to be honest with you, she continued. This show has been on the air a long time. We've had people cry here. We've had people laugh, argue, walk off. None of that scares me. Tom listened, expression still. What concerns me, Whoopi said, is when people think conversation itself is the enemy. Tom's eyes narrowed just a touch. I don't think conversation is the enemy. Then what is? Whoopi asked. Tom paused. The audience leaned forward again, drawn by instinct. Assumption, he said. Assuming access. Assuming readiness. Assuming everyone heals the same way. Whoopi nodded slowly. Fair. She glanced at the audience, then back at him. But let me push back for a moment. Tom nodded. Please. When you're someone people admire, Whoopi said, your silence can feel like distance. People want to know you survived what they're still going through. Tom absorbed that. His shoulders relaxed just slightly. I understand that, he said. I really do. Then why hold back? Whoopi asked gently. Tom looked down, jaw tightening. Because sometimes, he said quietly, talking about it pulls me back into it. The words landed softly, but they carried weight. A few audience members nodded. Someone sniffed quietly. Whoopi's voice softened. You think people don't understand that? I think some do, Tom replied. And some don't want to. The studio felt suspended, like a breath being held. Whoopi leaned back, considering him. You're asking for space in a place designed for closeness. Tom met her gaze. I'm asking for respect in a place designed for spectacle. The audience reacted immediately. A low wave of sound, half applause, half discomfort. Whoopi smiled thinly. This is television. Tom nodded. I know. And television, she continued, is messy. So are people, Tom said. That's why it matters how we handle them. The words echoed. For a moment, it felt like the two of them were speaking not just to each other, but past the cameras, past the audience, into something larger. Whoopi shifted in her chair. You know what people at home are probably thinking right now? Tom shook his head. They're thinking, why come on the show if you don't want to answer the questions? A murmur rippled through the audience. Tom didn't flinch. Because, he said calmly, conversation isn't obedience. The room stilled. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. That's a strong word. So is demand, Tom replied. A beat passed. The tension sharpened again, thinner now, more dangerous. Whoopi straightened. No one is demanding anything from you. Tom's gaze held steady. The format does. You keep blaming the format, Whoopi said. But formats don't speak. People do. Tom nodded slowly. And people follow incentives. The audience reacted audibly now. A few gasps. A few claps quickly cut short by uncertainty. Whoopi's smile faded. You think we're incentivized to push you. I think vulnerability sells, Tom said simply. The word sells echoed, ugly and undeniable. Whoopi's jaw set. That's a cynical view. It's a realistic one, Tom replied. Silence again. This time heavier than before. A co-host leaned in, trying to lighten the mood. Tom, you've played some incredibly vulnerable characters on screen. Isn't that also a form of sharing? Tom turned toward her, grateful for the shift. It is, he said. But it's mediated. It's shaped. It's safe. Safe. Whoopi echoed. Yes, Tom said. Because I can step out of it. I can leave the character behind. And you can't do that here? Whoopi asked. Tom shook his head. No. The simplicity of the answer cut deeper than any long explanation. Whoopi looked at him for a long moment. So what would make this feel safer? Tom considered it. The option not to answer without consequence. Whoopi sighed softly. That's not how interviews work. Then maybe, Tom said quietly. That's worth examining. The audience stirred again. This wasn't just about Tom Hardy anymore. This was about something structural, something uncomfortable. Whoopi leaned forward, her voice firm. You're asking to change the rules in the middle of the game. Tom met her gaze. I'm asking why the rules exist. Another co-host glanced toward the producer's booth, eyes wide. Time was slipping fast now. Whoopi glanced at the clock, then back to Tom. We're almost out of time, she said again, this time with finality. So I'll ask you one last question. Tom nodded. What do you want people to take away from this conversation? The studio went quiet. Even the cameras seemed to pause. Tom took a breath. When he spoke, his voice was steady but heavy with something deeper. That boundaries aren't walls, he said. They're doors. And you don't kick them in. A hush fell. The audience didn't know whether to clap, to gasp, or to sit still. Whoopi held his gaze. And what if people knock and you don't answer? Tom replied without hesitation. Then that answer should be respected too. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Whoopi nodded once. Slowly. Deliberately. All right, she said. That's Tom Hardy. Applause exploded, louder than at any other point in the segment. Not celebratory. Cathartic. People stood, some clapping, some still staring, processing. Tom stood as well, offering a brief nod to the audience. He shook hands with the co-hosts. When he reached Whoopi, there was a pause. A split second where it looked like one of them might say something more. Instead, Whoopi smiled. "Take care of yourself," she said quietly. Tom nodded. "You too." As he walked off stage, the applause followed him, trailing like an echo. Behind the scenes, producers were already huddled around monitors, replaying clips, arguing in whispers. Social media alerts lit up phones in rapid succession. Clips were being cut, quotes isolated, context stripped away and reshaped in real time. Out in the audience, people compared notes, voices urgent. "Did you hear what he said? That was uncomfortable. That was real." Whoopi pushed too hard. No, he was deflecting. By the time Tom reached his car, his publicist's phone was vibrating nonstop. Inside the studio, Whoopi removed her glasses and rubbed her temples briefly before the next segment began. She had hosted thousands of conversations, but this one felt different, because it wasn't over. It had only just escaped the room. By the time the episode ended, the studio was already old news. Outside, the world had caught fire. Clips from the exchange flooded timelines at a speed no producer could control. 10-second videos. 5-second quotes. Tom's unblinking stare. Whoopi's measured pushback. Captions screamed questions instead of answers. Was Tom Hardy silencing the view? Did Whoopi cross a line? Most uncomfortable moment on daytime TV? None of them told the full story. And all of them told just enough. In his car, rolling slowly through afternoon traffic, Tom stared out the window as his phone buzzed endlessly beside him. He didn't touch it. He already knew what was happening. He had lived this before. The strange distortion that followed honesty. The way silence, once released into the open, was no longer yours to control. His publicist finally broke the quiet. "It's everywhere." Tom nodded, eyes still on the road. "Of course it is. They're splitting into camps," she continued. "Some people are calling you brave. Others are saying you were disrespectful. A few are saying you looked angry." Tom let out a short breath that almost sounded like a laugh. "I wasn't angry." "I know," she said. "But perception moves faster than truth." Back at the studio, Whoopi sat in her dressing room, the door closed, the noise of the hallway muted. Her phone rested face down on the counter. She didn't need to look at it to know what it would say. She had been doing this long enough to feel the shift before the headlines confirmed it. One of the producers knocked gently. "You okay?" Whoopi nodded, but she didn't look up. "Yeah. That was intense," he said carefully. She exhaled. "Yeah. You think he was being unfair?" Whoopi paused. The question lingered in the air, heavier than it sounded. "No," she said finally. "I think he was being honest." The producer hesitated. "And you?" She looked up now, eyes steady. "So was I." Outside those walls, the conversation had grown teeth. Comment sections exploded. Some viewers praised Tom for standing his ground, calling his silence powerful, necessary, overdue. Others accused him of dodging, of hiding behind intensity instead of engaging. Memes appeared within hours. His stare looped endlessly, slowed down, dramatized, turned into a symbol of everything people wanted it to mean. Whoopi wasn't spared either. Some defended her fiercely, reminding everyone that asking questions was her job, that conversation required friction. Others accused her of pushing too hard, of representing a system that demanded pain on demand. Talk shows debated the moment that night. Podcasts dissected body language. Experts were brought in to analyze tone, pauses, eye contact. Everyone had an opinion. Very few talked about boundaries. Tom watched none of it. That evening, he sat alone, scrolling once briefly, before locking his phone and setting it aside. The noise wasn't new. But this time, something about it felt different. Less personal. More revealing. Not of him. Of them. The next morning, headlines had hardened into narratives. One outlet framed it as a clash of egos. Another called it a generational misunderstanding. One particularly viral take labeled it, "The moment celebrity vulnerability hit its limit." Whoopi read that one. She shook her head slowly. "That's not what happened," she murmured to no one. On her show the following day, she addressed it without naming it. "Sometimes," she said, looking directly into the camera, "a conversation makes people uncomfortable because it hits close to home. That doesn't mean someone is wrong. It means something touched a nerve. Across the internet, that clip spread too. Tom didn't respond publicly. No statement. No clarification. No apology. His silence became its own headline. Some called it strategic. Others called it stubborn. But for a few people watching, something else happened. Messages appeared quietly. Long ones. Thoughtful ones. Viewers who said they had never seen someone say no without raising their voice. Who said the moment made them feel seen. Others wrote that it forced them to question how they consumed interviews. How often they expected access without consent. Those messages never trended. But they lingered. Days later, the noise softened, as it always does. Another controversy took its place. Another clip. Another outrage. But the moment didn't disappear completely. It stayed archived in playlists, bookmarked in minds, resurfacing whenever someone talked about boundaries, about media, about silence. In a way, the aftermath said more than the confrontation ever could. There was no winner. No viral apology. No dramatic reconciliation. Just two people who refused to collapse into caricatures. And maybe that was why it unsettled so many. Because it didn't end cleanly. It ended honestly. Now we want to hear from you. Was Tom Hardy right to hold his ground? Or did silence cross into deflection? Did Whoopi Goldberg push necessary questions? Or did the format demand too much? Let us know what you think in the comments. Your perspective matters. If this story pulled you in, if you felt that tension, that discomfort, that moment where everything felt real, make sure you subscribe to Stage View. Like this video, share it with someone who loves explosive celebrity moments, and stay with us for more intense, cinematic stories that go beyond the headlines. This wasn't just television. It was a mirror, and not everyone liked what they saw.